This amendment, number 56, raises the DB threshold to $150,000 for airport development project. The current threshold, in my opinion, creates a virtual monopoly on T&I contract. I mean, you got to ask yourself, is the $2,000 threshold realistic in this day and age as it was set in the early 1930s? For anybody that's listening, I want to remind you that is Dust Bowl era policy. I mean, it's literally the age of prohibition. You could not go out legally and have alcohol when this limit was set. It was from a time when Adolf Hitler announced his state-sponsored car, the Volkswagen. For anybody else that's interested, a gallon of gas was 10 cents. A new house was $3,800. A new car, this is the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, a new car was $640, and your average income was $1,800. That's when this was done, and it still remains to this day. The current policy is proven to increase the cost of projects by somewhere between 7 and 20% and distorts markets to the detriment of taxpayers. By raising the threshold, we create more jobs and empower our small businesses. We should be allowing businesses to compete by being as efficient as they can be. This amendment does not repeal anything. It simply brings the threshold up to a reasonable level that is qualified and quantified currently in the simplified acquisition threshold. I want to remind everybody that this number and this policy predates Social Security. As a matter of fact, around this time, you'll be happy to know that Wiley Post conducted his first round-the-world flight. That's how old this is. I would ask my colleagues to break free of your partisan bonds and do what you all know in your heart is right and update this policy. Raising the threshold to $150,000 brings it in line with the simplified acquisition threshold, which is designed to help small businesses compete for and win federal contracts by cutting through bureaucratic red tape. I yield back.
Any other members wish to be heard on this amendment?
Hold on, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. I had to take a bathroom break. What amendment are we on? The staff can't tell me.
We are on Mr. Perry's amendment number 56.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would oppose the amendment. You know, I don't know how many times on this committee we have debated Davis-Bacon, you know, and I don't know how many times the repeal of Davis-Bacon has failed. I mean, I guess it's, you know, be optimal. I mean, we just preempted the state wage and hour laws in 21 states as applied to trucking. I mean, I don't know why you guys didn't just add in, I mean, the minimum wage is certainly an impediment to interstate trucking. Why didn't you know, preempt all the states on minimum wage so we could all drop down to that miserable federal level? And now you want to open the door to repealing Davis-Bacon. I really think, I mean, this bill is getting larded down. We just larded it down with the ideological reins amendment, which now means the private corporation will spend a lot of time determining safe routes. They'll refer them to the FAA, and then the United States Congress is going to have to vote on it. So much for the 45-day deadline on the Secretary, because now Congress has 70 days to get involved. So now we want to lard down the bill with, just a little exemption in Davis-Bacon. Well, how much can you parse a project up? We saw in the case of the Oakland Bay Bridge that they parsed up the project to get around U.S. By U.S. laws, which gave China this huge project, which they totally screwed up and drove up the costs. But we built them a manufacturing plant with U.S. taxpayer dollars. Oh, that was great. So now, we're going to create a new loophole here for people to segment up projects and say, that wasn't subject to Davis-Bacon. That's 150. That's 149.9. That's 149.9. That's 149.9. These are all little tiny projects. They do add up to quite a bit more than that. So, I would really hope that we aren't going to lard this bill down with more baggage. On the other hand, maybe I should hope, because that just makes it inevitable it's not going anywhere, and then we can get back to the parts of the bill we agree on and actually get those done. So I am strongly opposed to this amendment.
Mr. Lobiondo.
I am adamantly opposed to this amendment. Urge all of my colleagues to be adamantly opposed as well.
Any other members wish to be heard?
I'm also opposed to this amendment.
Wish to be heard, Mr. Ribble?
Yeah, I would just, I've always kind of have mixed
emotions on Davis-Bacon. I'll tell you why. Having spent 35 years in the construction business, I understand that labor costs are more directly relational to productivity than they are to hourly wage. Someone earning $15 an hour is likely to be paid $15 an hour because that's their production level. Someone earning $40 an hour is likely to be paid $40 an hour because that's their production level. The market kind of pushes those things away. And so in reality, you don't get a lot of savings by either eliminating Davis-Bacon or raising caps at Davis-Bacon. And in the same hand, to my friends in the construction industry, and they know this, but they don't always want to just admit it, you don't really lose anything if Davis-Bacon goes away, and you don't really gain anything if it stays. It almost becomes a moot point. But there are so many projects that go on that are so low in threshold. I mean, $150,000 in a construction project is a very low threshold to trigger it. If we really want to help smaller companies, if we want to help minority-owned businesses, and those companies aren't the big mega companies, to actually enter into these types of projects, whether it's painting the interior walls of an airport or putting new carpeting down or what have you. One of the ways to do that is to raise that threshold so there's more competition. And so for me, this is more of a liberty issue than it is really an economic one. Should the government be dictating every single jot and tittle of wages that are paid when the market is particularly effective at getting to the most productive wage available? It just works that way. And this is borne out in all kinds of data. If you look at road construction, you'll find states that have very low prevailing wage numbers have much higher cost per mile than states with high prevailing wage numbers, and they have lower cost per mile of construction. And it's all centered around the productivity of those workers and how much they can get done. In other words, if someone can lay 100,000 square feet of concrete with 10 people, and they're getting paid $30 an hour, but another company does 50,000 square feet with 10 people at $15 an hour, even though the lower hourly wage is there, the productivity is identical and the cost of the project is equal. It's the same thing. And we argue over this kind of stuff like it's the end of the world. But I think we always should tend toward more freedom, more liberty, more opportunity for everybody. And when you do that, and what I think Mr. Perry is offering here is a reasonable cost adjustment that would help smaller contractors engage in some of these projects that today they might not necessarily get into. And I'd encourage my colleagues to support it. With that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Ms. Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I won't be long. I rise in opposition to the amendment. It seems to me that this entire conversation is about the productivity for the company. And I guess I would like us to have a conversation about what prevailing wage means to workers who over the last couple of decades have actually seen their wages flatline. And in some areas, having a prevailing wage is actually what keeps them in our economy. And so I rise in opposition to this. I think it's a slippery slope. So today, 150,000, then we'll come back around. It'll be a couple 100,000, then 500,000. And the next thing you know, every single construction project, big and small, all across the country, will be paying workers what the market takes. But clearly, if the market were operating in the way that it needed to the benefit of workers, we wouldn't be having this conversation, and we wouldn't need Davis-Bacon protections. But in fact, it doesn't, and I think it's our responsibility to make sure that across the country, particularly where our tax dollars go to build some of these projects, that the people who do the hardest work for the longest time should receive a prevailing wage in the area in which they work in the economy, and I yield the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Mr. Rikita speaks his time.
I think the chairman, I just want to associate myself with Mr. Ribble's comments in support of this amendment. Look, raising this threshold ever so slightly shouldn't be a threat to organized labor, who I'm not against in any stretch of the imagination. But this does allow for the freedom and the flexibility to get smaller projects done in an effective way And the name of the game is still always productivity, and the best person should always win that, union or not. And I know my union brothers and sisters, I know that they can compete in that kind of environment. And so I would ask my colleagues to support this amendment. I yield back.
Any other members wishing to seek recognition? Seeing none, I just want to say I'm in support of this amendment, and my record is pretty clear in Congress in my last 15 years. I've never voted to repeal Davis-Bacon. I think what Mr. Perry's doing, it's a cost adjustment, and I'm not so much concerned about small businesses. I'm concerned about rural America. I'm concerned about the places in my district that have to get very little and want to stretch those dollars to finish up important projects, whether they're at their little airports or their water, sewer. And, you know, this sometimes makes it difficult. Again, this is not a repeal of Davis-Bacon. This is just a cost adjustment so that when you come to rural parts of the country, they can stretch those dollars and get these projects done. So I support this amendment. And with that, anybody seeking to amend the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
On that, we ask to record a vote. The noes have it.
I thought,
I know the noes are going to have it. I mean, the yeses are going to have it. I can hear him, so he's going to.
we'll have a recorded vote. So we'll postpone it until 2:30.